Hi everyone, this is Hilda Tedke. I'm here with the. Do you tend to use your name as RDG, or do you use the words, the full words, for describing your group?
Well, typically we refer to ourselves as simply the art studio at RDG Planning and Design.
RDG Planning and Design. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Well, thank you. As we spoke before the recording started, you're going to have your presentation. You're probably going to answer all the questions in the presentation itself, but we will still go through them afterwards in case something was, we need to clarify anything. Thank you for being here. I'm going to let you take control of the screen and show us what you have for us. Thank you.
great, great. So just to confirm, you can see our screen okay right now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Great, great. And you can see us okay with everything on the video?
We can see yes, there's a little
Great.
window with the three of you on the screen.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity that we are having here today to share a bit more about our work. I will speak for the team that's here with me today that we're excited to be considered for the proposal phase of the project. My name is Matt Niebuhr. I'm an artist with an architectural background and training. Collaborated with my partner and colleague and mentor, David Dahlquist, and my other colleague and partner and also mentor, landscape artist and architect, Doug Adamson. And so we're excited just to be able to share. I'm going to advance through this. We have a lot to share today with our three projects. A little bit about the work. Our firm, the Art Studio, is a part of a larger planning and design group. Together, David and I have completed over 80 projects across the United States. We're very fortunate to have opportunities to consider. We work both in public art commissions where the Art Studio leads the design effort, as well as an integrated art and design team where we're closely associated and working with a larger design team. So we're quite comfortable, I think, working in both scenarios and look forward to that.
And those projects represent things that are both large and small scale, many of which are very much the same scope as your own project.
This is our team. Includes, again, architecture, landscape architecture, artistry. Kate, we're also fortunate to have a project manager and a specialist with contracts to help us manage all the complexities. And so that's allowed us to also engage in a number of larger projects that involve collaborating with cities and governmental bodies. And so we have experience working, and we'll share a number of projects that express that as well. But I think that gives us the ability to negotiate all of the work that allows work to happen through contracts, et cetera.
We're fortunate to be able to work with people that have a lot of experience as well in cost estimating and budgeting.
A little bit about our studio today. That's where we're coming from today at 512 Elm. You'll see on the left is our production studio where we do a lot of ceramic work. Involves kilns and layout space and model making. It's truly a maker space from a terracotta ceramics perspective. It also has a well-equipped wood shop that allows us to make prototypes, to work with current materials, CNC machine, for example, things like that to help us with model making, mold making, etc. On the right-hand side is a little bit messy but vital design station.
So we have all the technology with respect to resources, developing imagery and visualization, but we've also had the ability to be hands-on. And I think that's an important aspect too. We use all kinds of different materials, and if it's not something that we're going to make ourselves, we have a network of people that we've developed for 30 years or more in metal and glass and fiber and wood and concrete, and all of those things go into play in our projects.
Example of mock-up, actually constructing components. This is for a project we'll learn more about here in one of our three that we're sharing in detail, but the importance of actually working at scale and sections through material and lighting as part of the integrated process. So you'll see in each one of these three projects that these three things are very important to us and kind of guide how we approach the process for us: story, structure, and site. And I think I'll just get into the projects to start to explain what those three things mean. I think it'll be pretty evident as we talk. Connections. I think this is something that is something Dave and I always recognize is an important part of this process. In other words, not just showing the final product, but how you got there. That's part of building the story and creating the sense of dialogue together. This is part of our engagement that we thrive in and I think feed on in terms of where inspiration and the energy comes from.
And I think one of the things that we have been recognized for is that we have gotten to know a place at a deeper level. History, mythology, the way sunlight hits a given location. We put all of that together in our own kind of research and due diligence. And so that's how a project evolves.
It's really where the story starts to unfold. So first project we think is very, very analog in some ways to your project. Leawood Justice Center public art installation in Leawood, Kansas. It's with a governmental body at law, new courtroom spaces on the right-hand side, police station on the left in a city center. Part of a process that had engaged initially in a public art call that had not come to fruition for the stakeholders. And we were fortunate to be asked to come and part of a round two, and where engagement with stakeholders was key. And that's where we developed a dialogue. And I think that that's part of the engagement part that we thrive in, which is to learn what does matter. They wanted to move beyond an interpretation of Lady Justice to yet speak to justice. And so this is just, again, part of how we get to that story that came through our series of meeting on site with the stakeholders, listening to what didn't work, what they were hoping to still achieve, and then interpreting. And so it was looking at a historical aspect and taking an aspect of the important thing, which was about recognizing something about justice.
And
happens to be the balanced scales in this situation.
In the process too, we reached out into the community. And that was something that was very important to the development of the piece. And so we moved from history and nature to something that has a real contemporary feel that functions. It's along a trail, it provides shade, it provides seating, and yet there's this contextual relationship between the piece, the underlying meaning of the story and the piece, and the building, what the purpose of the building is there.
Right. So this corner was a very open lawn space, essentially. And so we were asked to think about how we could intervene in that space in some way, and again, build a connection where the public would be invited to travel through and be a part of the experience. I think that's what you'll see in all three of these projects, is that Dave and I are always searching for that way to enter into the story with your body physically. So that interaction, that space where you're occupying it, seeing something and visualizing is an important aspect, but if you can engage and be in it physically, it's another level, the complement of touching something.
And a lot of our work has been related in what you might call art in transit, but you're able to see this and respond from a vehicle. You're able to see it and respond at a pedestrian scale, on a bicycle. And so there's a sense of movement that is part of it as well.
Color, texture, scales, all those things are important things we look at here. For instance, the browns and tones of the building and the backdrop really helped us think about what is a material that might harmonize with that. So that, again, what's a relatively modest public art piece in the scale of the architecture beyond, it builds on each other and creates a larger experience. So one of the questions was, in a very small budget, how do you have an impactful installation? And I think it comes from being aware of context and building on the context. There's a really strong architecture for the existing courthouse structure. So how can you relate to that? How, that will be part of the discovery that happens in the proposal.
And one of your questions, we will talk more about issues of safety. But lighting, of course, is a huge deterrent. And all of our work is very thoughtful of how a site changes from day to night.
And I think this picture on the left is something about entering into the idea that you might be bathed in shadow, or that you might have a particular bit of light that as you're passing through. It's just an invitation to feel that you're part of it, and the transformation that happens with that.
It's interesting too that such a hard material, weathering steel, can also be used in such a transparent way, so that there's a laciness, and we're conscious of the weight of this piece on the site as well. That fulcrum that looks as though it's glowing from within, and all the material sensibilities that come about in these pieces.
Color. This happens to harmonize with the color of the lighting there. So that's another aspect I know of the call, is that there was a question about wanting to invite color and celebratory like that. So I think that's something that is balanced in a number of different ways. The next project, the Lilly Pavilion project, is another intervention, and I'm going to invite Doug to speak a little bit about that and what it's about.
Sure. The Lilly Pavilion is within a 4-acre place that's between a 17-acre garden and frankly, the 60,000-seat Jack Trice Stadium for Iowa State University. It was designed as a passive public gathering space, and that celebrates and interprets art within a series of open lawns and overlooks and pathways, and also a large lily pond. And with that, the garden also has a flexibility to handle game day crowds of over 60,000 people. So it was designed to be very flexible. It also features smaller gardens. It breaks down into smaller gardens that specifically highlight significant art pieces. And that was a main idea of the design. With the central piece is the Lilly Pavilion, and it was designed for significant gatherings, very flexible again, passive, but also for concerts and weddings and special events, including game day events.
Inspiration, again, where does that come from? The Ryman Gardens that you mentioned, they had a Victorian lily specimen that was always recalled fondly in history. And so that became a jumping off point for thinking about how could you have an overhead structure, how could you have something that relates to that magic of a floating element. They're absolutely beautiful specimens. At the same time, the context of design with Iowa State University being a biologic science-based, plants-based university, how could you meld something with science as well? And so we became really intrigued with, well, how does this beautiful thing float right at the surface? Those are all things that start to become the story.
Home of the National Plant Sciences Institute. And so here you would have a gathering space where you are contained in the subject matter of the cellular structure of a plant.
So we go through a process of ideation, exchange, engagement, to arrive at also visualization, which is about sharing the story, and then also a technical explanation. So we're able to do all of those things together in-house, together with consultants. We regularly work with structural engineers and civil engineers as needed to integrate our work within technical drawings, again, the art and architecture together as part of a structure.
We were just featured in the Coda Works Summit with this particular company, Johnson Machine Works, where we were talking about the relationship of artists and industry, and how through this relationship, you get to a piece that is better, the quality of which is better. You're bouncing ideas off of one another. And so we've been very fortunate to work with some of the greatest fabricators in the country.
Which we're happy gets us to a point where there's an impactful installation on site, something that's a broad, general, open space, but yet has a focal point and it's open. One of the questions too was about security. I think that's an interesting topic. David and I were talking about that there's a number of different ways to think about security. There is a defensive where objects can defend you in a space, but there's also, I think, a way in which visibility, light, scale of human scale, the invitation to be invited into a space is also an important aspect of what safety is.
You know, a piece of artwork cannot stop a group from, you know, misbehaving. However, it can create such a welcoming environment, a non-threatening environment, contextually, that it changes the way people feel, the perception of that space. And I think that's something that all of our work has strived for.
The third project is a project right now that's in progress. We will begin installing here in 2021, and we're going to share very quickly as we get through this. This also relates to your project in that it asks to think how to knit together 3 separate sites that are separated by, in some instances, a block or so, or in other instances, 2 to 3 blocks, but how to create a story and a thread that connects an area together.
Extend and expand upon an idea that would give a viewer a reason to move from place to place.
It begins again with story, and so there is a historical element to it with the historic textile mills and the fiber industry to what we'll sort of jokingly say as Rocket City, where there's technology in Huntsville, Alabama, clearly the Saturn V and its history moving forward. So it's about artistic fact-finding and site visiting and getting to the nuanced detail of a little space to spark an idea. These happen to be little travelers that were embedded in the wood floors that when we came, no one knew what they were until we did the research and rediscovered what they were. Also inspirational, that idea of piercing the membrane of the stars, what's beyond.
That we're all travelers in essence. And the whole idea of trajectory.
This is the first site, which would lead the site. Again, analogous to your sites in a way, in that an open lawn, a centralized space, Big Spring Park, the heart of a city. How do you make a connection in a larger space to have both visibility, openness, and maybe a human scale that invites people to pause?
I think it's interesting as well, the artwork, one of the things they were most interested in is how the artwork could be a bridge between civic government and private development in that area, and how, you know, if you're fortunate enough, it could actually spur additional economic development by creating a place where people want to be.
So the invitation, where there's a public space to pass through and a place to pause. I think that that's something that'll be important in the lawn space in your project to think about. Where are those right moments? Where are there moments where another piece of art or something in the future may happen? Is there a space and a thought of, is it part of the narrative in the overall design? So that's something that we're really excited about in the conceptual phase to work on the project.
And from a larger landscape perspective, I think one of the things that we heard, which we were very proud of, is that in this larger plaza, you've got relationships that are both inside and outside. You have rooms, you have things that are open and closed. You have a sense of transparency and shadows that move across that larger space. And so those are all things that I think our work has done in a number of different locations.
And whether the piece is viewed from above, from the surrounding architectures, or becomes iconic in that way. But again, I think the carefulness of human scale is probably one of the key fundamentals to a large open space, is creating those invitations for people to be safely, to gather safely.
You talk about the impact of the budget and maximizing the experience. We have always been very conscious of scale, and I think our work has tried to push whatever the budget was in such a way that you're balancing things. We test the budget throughout the entire process. We don't assume until the end. We're testing things out, you know, fabrication and materials, in order to try to get something that feels the right size.
Shade? was a fundamental part of the second connection here. Again, the theme of the stars and constellations and the idea of exploration is an element, a palette that extends to all three pieces. But again, the idea of gathering, and you'll see the little bench forms there as a functional aspect designed and inspired by the Traveler's Form. Those were all parts of that connection. I think that human comfort in providing shade, I think that that's something that also creates a hospitable human space.
And again, for a narrative concept, a star map, the constellations in the sky reflected in shadow. Yeah.
Being aware of the views and the connections back, you'll see the Big Spring Park connection in the background, the idea that you have a destination and one piece leading to another piece. And the third part of this is, I'd say, the introduction in some ways. It's the icon.
It's a gateway.
It's the gateway feature. And we were able to collaborate with architects, or excuse me, with landscape architects and civil engineers designing this park outside of this new building, which is a community foundation park. And so it was a wonderful opportunity to collaborate with this idea of pathway and also organizing the icon and its location, as well as a donor recognition element. So again, that collaborative process is something that we're very comfortable with and like to work in.
They responded so well to the idea of trajectory and the traveler that it was adopted by their community foundation to become the community foundation park with this donor integrated element.
Sense of scale, again, open, inviting someone to walk through, inspired again by the narrative and the patterning materials. Just a quick reminder that we're in color studies, and so in our own studio, developing the mock-ups, doing the study at scale, a section of this, working with a lighting designer, which is also part of the benefits of being with planning and design firm. We have a lighting person, David Raver, that we were able to test different kinds of lighting inside the piece, and really gave us, I'm gonna click this, I think it'll play, a sense of what's going to happen for a project before it's built and on site, so that we can really tune and make that part of the process. So again, I think we were seeing in all these assets, we clearly will have the ability to provide a system as the public art group determines is the flow of the process as it goes out into the public and engagement, how, you know, the assets that we can offer and provide in terms of process.
We pay a great deal of attention to communication with the public art administrators, communication with the public, all of the different advisory people, whether that be architects or landscape architects in the process. Communication is a huge factor in creating the right piece.
And again, just an example of what we're doing right now, even by being flexible with Zoom. Our company actually was working in Zoom, I think, back in 2013. So we have quite an experience working with Zoom before Zoom was a household name. Now that we do with our grandmothers and grandfathers, which is great. But,
yeah, including public engagement, ways of tracking public engagement, even virtually. Right. But a lot of our projects, we should say, have involved grassroots, you know, boots on the ground, public engagement sessions, survey monkeys, presentations to all kinds of different constituent groups with different agendas. It's been something that we've really used as part of our ongoing process.
You can imagine we're quite interested in the opportunity to have a local artist being involved. And we saw that that was one of the options in the proposals, that that engagement level as that sort of another person on the ground. So I think clearly we would welcome that opportunity as we move forward.
Including diverse communities.
Just an example again of engagement. This is a Native American project in Wisconsin that we're working on, where there was an art group that was put together of artists there from the tribe, and we developed a rapport by sharing sketches virtually on Zoom, and helping us to include, understand, and interpret in an authentic way what the story was to be translated into mosaics. And so that dialogue is something that would happen, and it's different when it's done virtually, but it's something that can be accomplished by just spending the time to look at each other's work and ask each other questions.
Listening.
Yeah.
We included these because we thought it might be a way to answer questions we might not have touched on. You included in your RFQ, your prospectus, an example of the John and Mary Papa John Sculpture Park. We were the local architects and artists that worked on that project. And so safety, lighting, drainage, security, hand in hand with John and Mary and Mario Gondolsonis and Diana Agrest, not wanting a sculpture garden, but wanting a park that was in effect an outdoor gallery with berms and rooms created that now has become the centerpiece for our community. At one time, all the buildings were empty around it, and now they're all full. All the teeth, they're there. And the piece on the right, the High Trestle Trail Bridge from here to there, while it's not a plaza, I think what it speaks to is that we created a landmark. We created something that was iconic, that has been identified as a place-making initiative that has drawn people from all over the world. And of course, it has very dramatic lighting. It has all the things that you deal with: story, structure, and site, in a piece that's been identified by Public Art Year in Review, by the BBC as one of the 8 best footbridges in the world. And so we've been able to reach for something that is a larger experience in all of our work.
I believe that we have accomplished what we had set out to do with our presentation, and I hope we've tried to address the questions, but Hilda, I'd love to hear what you think.
Well, first of all, thank you. The timing was excellent. We may have just 5 more minutes or 3 more minutes to answer questions. I think you've incorporated every question in there. Perhaps the only one I would like to read out loud, just in case may need a little clarification, if I may. Number 6, which says that the Cultural Council has adopted a policy around diversity, equity, and inclusion as follows. The Cultural Council of Greater Jacksonville commits to championing policies and practices of cultural equity that empower a just, inclusive, and equitable city. How will you and your team incorporate this into your planning, designing an artistic approach to the Courthouse Plaza? And you may have mentioned diversity, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to maybe expand on that.
Well, one quick answer to that is it could be that the artist that is selected to work locally is an artist that represents that diverse community. And so all of a sudden, you're listening through different ears. You're listening through a person that is sensitive to the immediate needs and objectives of that community. I think listening becomes a big deal of it for us anyway. You know, we've been put into situations where you have to step back. You have to, you know, check your ego at the door and be able to say, we're here to capture something of your interest, of your history. And so we've done that on many, many occasions. Kansas City, and right now in Fort Worth, Texas, in an all African-American community called Lake Como that celebrates these kinds of connections.
Yeah, I think fundamentally it's what we love to learn as artists do. And I think that that's, it's a core, no matter what background you may come from, that we believe and trust in. And I think we are willing to listen and learn and want to invite those other voices into the process. And so that is how we would approach it, is with open ears, like you said.
You know, I believe that public art is about people. And so there is always a kind of egalitarian sense that you have to be responsible to the fairness of where those people are, where they are, so that it is inclusive, so that you are not disenfranchising people, so that you're not displacing people.
Thank you. That's very good. Right. Well, we've come to the end of the time. Thanks again. We will obviously stay in touch and let you know how it goes. And it was great talking with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye for now.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.